Okay, so welcome to part two of my layman's explanation of blockchains. Um, and today we're going to look at smart contracts. So, pardon me. I'll start with a little bit of history. So, the first blockchain was Bitcoin, come out in 2008, and it was very simple. It's just a database. You're just sending fundamentally the information about whose Bitcoin is where. But as I said in the other one, each block has the ability to contain a certain amount of actual raw data, like 8 megabytes or something. And the amount of data it can hold in that block is actually very important to the technical functioning of blockchains and issues of scalability, stuff like that. But I'm not going to go into that. Instead, it's just important to know that you don't just send a token, say a Bitcoin. You can attach data to it. So what followed Bitcoin is the second blockchain to come out. It's called Ethereum, and its sole purpose really was to exploit this and fundamentally create a kind of automated computer system on the blockchain, like hardwired in, coded into the blockchain, by utilizing these small nuggets of data. And simply put, they call them smart contracts because simply put, it's basically an automated kind of action that will happen after predetermined conditions. So basically, kind of if, when, then that would happen. And you just set enough of these up to start executing pretty complicated things, like websites or computer games. But that's the basic principle. Now, what's the advantages of creating this kind of coded, automated, decentralized computer system? Okay, so the first is it will have greater speed and efficiency. Automated digital processes are just faster and more efficient than human physical ones. You're going to have more trust because there's no third party. So if it is a proper kind of contractual agreement, and often you'll have a third party kind of verifying the contract, well, they're gone. So they can't be corrupted. They're out of it. You've got increased security because the transactions are encrypted. You have transparency as well with security because the actual history of the whole blockchain is there. It's contained in the unalterable chain of blocks. But the actual transactions, they're encrypted. So that helps security-wise. But also in terms of security, no one can go back and start changing that history. So you're safe there. And I guess the last one is just savings because, you're not, well, if you're using Bitcoin, you're not saving anything. But probably not Ethereum either. But generally speaking, like digital systems like this, they don't have physical infrastructure. They don't have to pay human beings. It's just cheaper. So that all sounds really theoretical. And so what would be the real world applications of this kind of system? So I'm going to just go through a whole load really quickly. And then maybe at the end you can think whether these things are, Ponzi schemes that have no utility in the real world, which is the, it's what everyone's saying at the moment. So let's just go on the first one. The first one, which is actually really happening right now, in effect, is being used. It's not hypothetical. Is decentralized finance in terms of decentralized exchanges online, which basically means there's no one behind that exchange that's making the decisions about whether they should loan you money or not loan you money, and that kind of thing. So that basically allows people that would be otherwise excluded from the credit system or the financial system to access it. Clearly that can help some people who maybe reasonably shouldn't be accessing a credit system. But also it helps people, and this is more potentially useful in places like Africa where there isn't a banking system. They're basically excluded from that. So, now all they need is an internet connection, and they can start to engage with the things that are basically, everyone in the Western world takes for granted. So that's one that's actually really happening. I think the ones that are really on the forefront and people are really pushing to get in next is things like logistics. So say you've got really time sensitive, information sensitive things like medicines. It's just better if you have automated, self-fulfilling kind of contracts. Another one there is useful is, say, in the food network, you could easily construct a blockchain system that would be much stronger in, say, organic labeling and source of origin labeling and those kind of things. So there's a benefit to having it there. In fact, international trade in general, there's a lot of trust in international trade. There's a lot of trusted third parties. So just getting rid of those speeds things up and reduces costs. Going further, which no one's talking about yet, but I think is will be happening, is things like state benefit systems. So at present, you've got a purposely complicated, difficult to engage with, regularly failing system that will supply the citizens of its country with the benefits they're owed. So you could replace that whole system with a blockchain system, and I think you would. It'd be a lot cheaper. It'd be a lot faster. I mean, there'd be no excuse for waiting. 6 weeks before you get universal credit? No, it would be instant. Once you've met the criteria, boom, you get your money. What's another one? Another one is like power grids. So at the moment, we're in a system where people basically bid for power. You don't really see it because it's just delivered through your supplier, but effectively that supplier is bidding for power from the power stations, and the big industries are bidding for power from the power stations. And that entire thing could be decentralized, and you could just have an automated market for electricity. That's another one. So another one is, say, decentralized web services. So something like YouTube. It's possible to set up a decentralized YouTube where YouTube wouldn't get to tell you what you're allowed to put on there or not. Maybe you could have something hardwired in, like just immediately deletes pictures of children or something. But fundamentally, it wouldn't have advertising on it. Wouldn't have any kind of centralized control. I mean, the downside to that kind of thing is blockchains don't work without a certain amount of commodification. Like the token that runs it has to have a monetary value, or it collapses. So if you go back to the notion of how a proof of stake system secures its security, it's important that stake is valuable. If it's not valuable, then you're not staking anything. So yeah, there's an essential kind of commercialization at the heart of blockchains, which I think a lot of people banging on about the kind of socialist benefits of blockchains aren't really paying attention to. But to be honest, I don't think there's that many socialists banging on about blockchains. It's mostly kind of uber capitalists who see just this kind of beautiful land of unregulated capital flows. Okay, so what's one of the last ones? Last ones is something called an NFT, or a non-fungible token. Now, you've probably heard that banged around a bit. I hadn't really heard it before all of this, but it's pretty simple, really. A fungible token is something that has like multiple copies of itself. So the pound coin is a fungible token because there's more than one pound coin. They're all interchangeable. None of them are unique. So a non-fungible token would be just an individual coin that had no other, so they just released a 900,999 million pound coin, just one of them, just, for shits and giggles. That would be a non-fungible token. Although they could probably print more, so maybe not a good example. I guess maybe a piece of art, and that's where it's got a lot of traction at the moment, these NFTs. They're basically, people are making digital art, kind of, and then having an NFT basically say that is the original and original is theirs. You can still basically copy that piece of digital art, but without the NFT next to it, then it's not the original. So you have a complete same copy, a bit like, I guess, with normal art where you can make copies of it. But, this is the thing that proves that was the original. Now you can go into that as well, like people making millions off, nothing really. But that actually is the modern art world. If you look at it in a really brute value way, very few pieces of art should be worth more than £1,000, £2,000 or £3,000 because, how long did the artist actually take to make it? So, they're clinging onto this kind of uniqueness to justify that a painting should go for £500 million. But really, that whole thing is just tax avoidance. If you've got enough money, £500 million to spend on a painting, it means you've got so much money you're struggling to invest it. It's, you don't want to put it all into houses because you can't move houses quickly. If you put it into money, then £500 million, inflation really hits you there. Inflation's going up, that money's going down. So, where do you put it? Well, you can put it into one piece of paper that rolls up, looks pretty on your wall, guaranteed to be sold for more than what you bought it for. So yeah, it's just a capitalist system for wealth. And I think a lot of the new NFTs is basically this, the new crypto millionaires having a similar problem. They probably can't get that much of it out into the real world and stuff. So this is, they're just taking a leaf out of the old capitalist book on that one. The other part that NFTs play at the moment is, you probably heard this as well, the metaverse. So that's like a term for really, which is a collection of blockchains now. And they're all seeking to build these kind of unique decentralized worlds, digital worlds, and they use the notion of an NFT to construct them. So you have like unique things in there. One of them being, say, a unique parcel of land. So now you can go buy a parcel of land because you have this NFT, which is like a contractual token. So yeah, I mean, there's people homeless in this world, and people are spending thousands on digital pieces of land. It's pretty sickening, really. But I'm not sure that's not a problem of the blockchain. That's a problem of our society. But yeah, that's going to be a huge thing in the future, the metaverse, and I think you're going to see, a lot happening in that space. Anyway, that's a lot of the uses really of this kind of smart contract technology, and for me, I think it's got huge potential for, if we're doing all those things, like actually reducing the amount of energy and resources used to run certain systems, like logistics systems, etc., etc. So, in a sense, it could be a really good way of dropping the environmental footprint of a lot of these activities, because you're not having to go for these really physical manifestations of them. And especially once you run them on a proof of stake blockchain, electricity goes right down. So there's actually huge benefits for costs and stuff like that, which is why I think, to a degree, they are inevitable. I think history has shown that if anything is faster, cheaper, more efficient, it will eventually replace the thing that is faster and more efficient. I think the only example that goes against that trend is political systems. We're still in a political system that is running at 18th century speed, and we're in the 21st century. So, but there's obvious reasons for that. Political systems are completely entrenched with power, and they're not going to, they're not going to let go. Not without a fight. But on all the other stuff, I think you're looking at a relatively inevitable rollout of this kind of technology. There's only one thing at the moment holding it back, and that is its scalability, like its ability to actually do the number of transactions needed in a given second to actually run all of this stuff. And that hasn't been solved yet. There's lots and lots of very clever people working on it. They've hit, every milestone so far. Whether they will actually complete it, you don't know. But I would bet on them, coming true on that. So this brings me really to what I think is the greatest danger of this technology, and is once these things do scale, and once the first a blockchain is used in a logistics network, the first blockchain is used in a state benefit system, then very quickly they're going to start going through a lot of different systems. And if you take all the other revolutions in technology that have replaced things, they've always been physical. Well, the internet, it hasn't been. But even the internet requires on a lot of physical stuff to run it, and things like Amazon needs its warehouses and stuff. So this is almost just like a pure digital rollout, and that's going to be fast. That will be basically as fast as the resistance against it. So fundamentally, I think it is going to lead to a vast amount of jobs being lost. And there's one argument that's really great. No one's doing shitty jobs anymore. But of course, if you're in a system where you can't really survive without a job, then you're being condemned to, a very slow, miserable death or whatever. So I think this kind of technology will bring on something like UBI to try and balance that out. But that's all hypothetical. I think also what might be interesting is like these job losses are not going to come by and large at the blue collar worker level. A lot of these jobs aren't going to be replacing the people packaging the food on the production line or driving the trucks in the logistics system. They're going to be replacing middle managers and upper managers. And in like decentralized finance, they're going to be replacing some very rich people making a lot of money out of this system. And so I think that will be interesting sociologically to see what effect that has on a society when large amounts of well-educated, aspiring workers are made redundant and forced to live on a UBI. Because at the moment, I think everyone who's basically been forced into these kind of poverty handout situations are generally, they're brought up to expect it, aren't they? They're kind of, generationally unemployed, or people who are just, fail the education system and so are told they, can't work and stuff. They're prepared, really, by our society to accept the meager rations that they will be given. That's very different to people who have been told their whole life that they should be in the middle to upper crust. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they respond to that. I think that's my general overview. I think of smart contracts. Can I think of anything else? I guess maybe just expanding in a socialist way, like what would that mean could blockchain be used in a more socialist manner rather than being co-opted by capitalists? And I think maybe potentially maybe just like the internet, there is a potential for it to be used in a more sociologically sensitive way, just by creating these kind of global commons, these global contractual systems, which remove the third parties, which are effectively pulling the strings and taking all the money. So, there is a scope for these systems to act in a more, I think, sociological way. But I think, as with any technology, it'll be used by the ruling class of its society. And right now, that's capitalists, so they've got no interest in setting it up in this sociological way. So it won't happen. Depressing. Oh, there was another page. Look at that. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and this isn't to do with smart contracts. Actually, it's to do with something called stable coins. I don't know if people have heard about that, but I actually think stable coins right now is the thing that is getting a lot of the big financial sectors and the banks and the governments a bit more spooked, really. So basically, a stable coin is not decentralized. It's a centralized blockchain, which means basically, one company owns it all and can kind of do what it wants. And I think they're all based on the US dollar. So basically, I'll talk about the first one, which is USD Tether. And basically, if you were to purchase one Tether, the Tether Corporation, or people who own Tether, would back up that purchase with $1. Maybe a fractional thing on, just so they can make a bit of money. Like, you'd be buying it at 1.001 or whatever. So the idea is every stable coin is backed by a dollar. And this has totally facilitated the trading market in cryptocurrencies. It doesn't really help them perform at what they want to do. But if you want to be a trader and make money out of doing nothing and gambling, then it's critical, really, because it allows you to get out of your position in Bitcoin and into the dollar without actually having to leave the cryptocurrency exchange and go and get some real dollars, which is, expensive, time-consuming. You can do it now, just switch into Tether, and so you can play the fluctuations in the Bitcoin market. Now, why would governments really be that bothered about that? Well, the key problem is I think Tether now. I should really look this up, actually. No, okay. Tether, anyway, it's like the amount of money that's in these stablecoins is getting to the hundreds of billions of dollars, and Tether was recently fined $41 million for not actually having enough collateral to back all of the Tether it had given out. And the collateral it did have wasn't cash dollars, sat in this case. It was something called short-term commercial paper. So basically like, company debts and all these other kind of like complicated financial things which are nominally worth something. They have a value, but they're not dollars. So you get into this situation where you've, say, got $500 billion worth of assets. The global economy goes into a recession, thus hitting this kind of commercial paper and destroying the dollar value of Tether. At the same time, nobody wants to have their money in Tether when the economy is tanking, so everyone basically tries to give their Tether back and get some dollars. And yeah, you can see how if people can't do that, it leads to a crisis. It's exactly the same crisis that affected the banking sector 2007, 2008. The banks didn't have enough money in them to cover the amount of debt and stuff they had been selling and putting out. So when it all suddenly came in, everyone was like, give me my money back. They were like, whoops, I ain't got any. And one after another, they went under. And that's why, states around the world had to print money and put it into the banks. which they still haven't given back. So we should really get onto them about that. Could really be useful now. But anyway, these stablecoins then are identified as being a risk to the wider economy because they're described as a systemic risk. So it's basically, if you have a kind of 2008 situation within the crypto digital currency sphere, if that sphere has got to, it's 1.5 trillion now, which is actually pretty minor, but if it expands to 5 trillion or so, you're looking at, you're looking at a very large domino falling over. That's what they're scared of at the moment, really. They're not scared of Bitcoin itself replacing the dollar, because that's just stupid. I think that might be it now. So I hope you enjoyed that one as much as the last one. And yeah. Whee!